Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. We neither represent, promote, or demote any 12-step program or organization. We are merely souls on the path of recovery with the desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 55th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. I'm Milan Starcic with co-host Bryant W. Today's topic is expectations. Could you tell us what this means to you, Bryant?
Yes, I can. Thanks for having me, and it's so nice to be with you again. So throughout most of my life, that word was subconscious, and it was manifesting in a variety of different ways in my nervous system and in my perception of myself and other people. I didn't really know that until I got quite a lot further along in the process of redefining, sort of like right sizing my self importance and understanding how come I had been living the way I did, which for the most part was self destructive. It took me a really long time to understand that for a variety of reasons, I had lived out of a fairly low self-esteem for quite a few years. And so the unrealistic expectations were the primary reason for my discomfort before sobriety. They still can be, but now I think that I have a much better perception of what I should expect of myself, both in giving a little more and knowing I could rise to the occasion often better, and or cutting myself some slack and having some grace for myself and other people. So that word expectation, I think it was a subtle foe prior to investigation. And now with the information and the understanding of how it was operating, it's actually something that can bring me back to a place of right-sized self-importance, as well as a huge part of being able to navigate that whole kind of interaction with other people.
Well said, brother. Well said. You know, for me, expectations have been a massive part of my journey since going to options, right? Like,
Yeah.
you getting, the tools of the steps and doing the steps, as well as just some of the group therapy that you do inside there, really revealed to me how much I was sitting in a situation of expectations on others.
Yeah.
And really, like you touched on it there, but like the expectations, self expectations was crippling to me. Like I could find beauty in the flaws of others and just never see that in myself. Like have this expectation of that I'm going to be able to make everything all right. Like I need to make smarter choices. I need to have been, I need to be better looking. I need to be, I need to be, instead of any acceptance of how I am right now. And it was absolutely crippling. And, it's, I'm just going to say it right now. One of the biggest phrases I remember from options is expectations, right? Are premeditated resentments. And, like there's no denying that. Like
That's true.
if you are laying an expectation on how someone's going to act, you are almost, 999 out of 1,000 times going to be disappointed.
No
Like,
kidding.
there'll be the odd time where somebody comes through like the Mother Teresa for you and does everything how you want, but that's really that is generally not the case. That there will be some imperfection of your expectation to reality. And that, is just such a truthful statement. Like bottom line. And I'm I'm going through, a whole set of struggles right now inside my own personal program, and we'll get to more of that later on. But
For sure.
it absolutely does still have to do with expectations, and part of
No
those
doubt.
expectations are that I should be somewhere in the program that I'm not.
No
You
doubt.
know,
Yes, sir.
like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm 17 months. That should mean like that this pain or this defect is gone. One of the coolest things, dude, I went to the Saturday in-person meeting here just a couple nights ago. It was
Okay.
the oldest cake I've ever seen someone take. 49 years this lady
Wow.
took. And she
That's
said
amazing.
one of the hardest things for her was being able to come to a meeting when she's not doing well because she felt the expectation, like this was all in her head. Nobody said anything to her, but she said she felt the expectation, like the self expectation that she should be doing better after 49 years. So she felt like it was like it would damage people's perception of the program if she was sharing the pain that she was in.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
like, after 49 years,
That's pretty
like
neat.
we're still human and pain is still real. And when she was sharing that, I was like, man, I got nothing to complain about here. you know,
No doubt.
I realized, like her saying that, you wouldn't believe, like almost every share after her little like it's they don't do like speaker birthdays here. There was like
Okay.
5 different birthdays. Everybody got like a share's worth for their birthday, right? Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
after that, almost every single person who shared on what she had said. They're like, man, I'm
Nice.
10 years in. It's the same thing. I'm 15
Yeah.
years in. I'm 30 years in, and it's the same thing.
That
You know,
probably helped a lot of people.
it probably did. And,
Yeah.
and it was her vulnerability and,
Yeah. That's amazing.
and her like really her showing that she's still work in progress.
Oh man, that like actually touches me. That's a really
I
cool
wanted
thing
to
to
share
share.
that today because I
Yeah.
feel like for both of us, that is a bit of a beacon of hope and a beacon of reality, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, yeah. So I'm going to
Yeah.
fly right into the questions because I love you. Okay.
Okay. I
Our
love you too, man.
expectations of ourselves can be so overwhelming that they cripple
Yeah.
us. Part of
Mhm.
developing new habits we can sustain is finding better reasons to do them than we should. How have you been trapped in the shoulds of life, Bryant?
Yeah. Right off the tip, a great question.
I love to try to bumper stump you.
No doubt. Yeah. I get kind of like, yeah, I twist myself up in the flow of it. Well,
I can
just
repeat it.
no. Well, I might ask you too. I'm good at this moment. It's just exactly in alignment with that share about that gal. It's in essence, it's this idea that we should be somewhere that we perceive we're not, and or um, I mean, fundamentally, addiction and the human condition. I don't want to get too taken away here, but like
Yeah,
the
get taken,
actual
get taken.
the actual role of the identity with ego is the feeling of lack. So in the process of getting well or healthy, it's really easy to feel or perceive that things are missing, that you should be responding differently and better. And that's really important because like you do need to keep growing and learning. I actually wrote down what you were saying in a previous chat about being the seeker and having that little bit of discomfort to keep you pursuing betterness and or wholeness. But I do it all the time. And like, I think, okay, I'll just talk about my actual experience. So when I put a lot of effort into something and then it goes up in flames, I and then I find myself back to a place that makes me really, really uncomfortable that I thought that I had gotten past, whether that's getting a job or relationship stuff or just, being behind on something and getting back up to date. Once, like, whether it's like, all these little things. Like if I think I've conquered something and then I find myself back in that seat again, and I've got people being like, well, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, like I hate being in this position. And that's when it just comes flooding in. Like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Why is anybody looking at me this way? And like, I don't owe anybody an explanation, but I wish I had one. And like, it just that sort of stuff, and that's being like very honest. um this should still come at me with thunder when I find myself in those vulnerable times where I genuinely perceive that I'm being perceived. It's usually when I'm thinking someone else is thinking something about where I'm at, and I feel discomfort and I'm unhappy with that place that I'm at. Yeah.
Nice. Well put, brother.
Yeah.
I love to try to, not stump you, but just get you grinding through the brain, and you deliver every time. So that's one of
How
the reasons why I think we play so well on this show.
about
Okay,
yourself?
so there's so many layers to this
Exactly.
for me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, first of all, right now, my biggest grind is my financial jeopardy. And that
Yeah.
financial jeopardy is like, man, I'm 52. I should
Yeah.
not be here when I'm 52. I should have had this
Yeah. Yeah.
sorted decades ago. I shouldn't have I shouldn't have made the mistakes I made, blah, blah, blah. And, so, but one of the things that, I try to
Yeah.
comfort myself through that process of mental anguish about it is that, when I was 25, I had a house burned down and I started with nothing, man, with like a van and my dog and no
Okay.
toothbrush, not even a change of clothes. And so that experience taught me that I can rebuild my life from nothing. Like if
That's true.
everything I have is taken away right now, I'm probably not going to like that. I worked really hard for some of that stuff. I built that fucking house I'm in now. If I lose that house, that is going to be a heartbreaking experience to me, man.
Yes.
Undeniably. Um,
Yeah.
but when I had nothing, I wasn't any less happy than I am now. I was
I
like, I'm
understand.
really
Yeah.
happy when I was poor, actually. Like when I was poor, there was some real moments of happiness, just a lot less options, like finances.
Sure.
And then, and then part of, this path of self-discovery that I'm on with this program and in
Yeah.
my sobriety is, I feel pressure from friends and family members to behave in the way I used to behave.
Oh
And
Lord.
and
Yeah.
so, well, sure, like I mean, dude, when you people please for a long time as a reparation for your addictive behaviors, right? People begin to expect that behavior. And
Very
and
true.
so to just be like, no, this is how I want to be now, and I don't want to do that anymore, and I don't want to play that game, really can make some grindage between me and those other people,
That's a good point. Yes.
and there's just no two ways about that. Like that is
No doubt.
just a reality of what and so there's growing pains inside that. And then it's
Oh,
also, what I should do with my time.
yes.
And man, people say to me all the fucking time, "Oh, you do too much of this, you do too much of that." And it's just like they don't have the same goals as me.
This is
You
true.
know? They really are they didn't try to set the world record for songwriting last year. They didn't start a new podcast. They're not trying to change their lives. So it's just like, like as long as you're not hurting me or someone I love, I could give a fuck what you do with your life. Like it's really
Yeah.
not my business, you know? And
Yeah.
and so I find it so odd the amount of like control comments that I get in in a monthly, like when I look at it, I'm like, whoa, like I really don't care that much about what you're doing. Slow
Right.
down on that. Slow down on that for me, please. Like I don't want to live in shame or guilt, and I'm not shameful of all the things that I do. So,
Right.
it's really it's really just none of anybody else's business what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, I can
And
respect what you're saying a lot. Yeah,
and I'm just not so impervious ego wise to not question myself when I get too many questions from other people, right? Like,
it's tough.
so
Yeah,
yeah, so you know, man, I'm wading through the shoulds like it's a muddy river some days,
no
but
doubt.
I'm still trying to make it to the other shore. Still trying to make it to the other shore, brother. You know?
And that's the key. Yeah. I think I think what we get is a reprieve from the intensity of how much those things impact. And then previously, our solution actually was self destructive, whereas now we can feel the discomfort, but we have a solution that doesn't set us back, spiraling back into that perception that we assume other people already expect us to do, right? To just crash and
Mhm.
burn and act out that same behavior. So we may not be relieved entirely, but it's a great step in the right direction. I would say
Nice. You got a question for me now, B Dubs?
it's completely in alignment with what you just said. My question is, do you put unrealistic expectations on yourself based on what you think others expect you to do?
And I do, like one of the things is I'm definitely can be really hard on myself with the expectation of being very different because I know how to be different,
Okay,
you know? And like and then it's like I have this expectation that I'm going to be able to maintain that behavior of more enlightened behavior, and it just doesn't come all the time. And there's so
of
many
course. Yeah.
factors like fatigue, food, whatever, like just the speed at which something's coming at me, for me to react, like, man, sometimes just in the heat of a negative conversation, I can be fucking 10 again. Like in just like I'm like, who the fuck was that little kid who just came through this conversation? You know?
Yeah,
And so for me, this expectation that even that I can sustain my attitude and serenity, like I know deep down in here that I'm better than I was. I do know
there
that.
it is.
Like
That's
absolutely.
good. Yeah,
But, you know, I still am hard on myself when I falter. I
I
wrote a
totally
song
understand.
called Falter in My Quest this fall.
Yeah.
And it was literally,
Well, they say
you know,
trudging the road, trudging the road.
yeah, they don't say galloping up it in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Ooh, la, la, la. We're not the Smurfs. La, da, 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 da. Hey.
Totally. Well, and have you finished your?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's up to you, B Dubs, on this one.
I was gonna say just exactly with the. I got fooled. I got fooled, Milan. Like in my first year, it was well, maybe it was based on the contrast of how horrible things were before that, but in my first year, like so many cool things happened that I actually thought that things were just gonna keep getting better and better and some like really neat stuff happened. It was perfect timing, I guess, for that part of my life. I don't know, but that's a nice little fact and challenge because I called myself out on that in one of our previous chats. Just I actually thought I would be protected from some of these things that happen to people where I'm like I can't have that happen to me. But so I'm going to admit something. Like literally in the last 3 days, my older sibling said those words to me. She's like, I think sometimes you think you're more enlightened than others. And I was like, ooh, like that was like a double smash because I would say that I wouldn't want anyone to think that of me. And she was not only saying that she perceived that, but that she thinks that I think that. So I was like, man, that's
Mhm.
rough. And I tried to gently tell her that she also paid a little bit of homage and respect to the fact that clearly I have tried to change in positive ways. Like she did add that, but I was in that moment quite taken back by that, because I really do try to avoid that superiority inferiority mechanism that basically I think is pretty much fundamentally conditioned in us as people. Like we are constantly feeling each other out, and it's like, oh, and like, we're easy to put ourselves down when we're in the company of others that we think are way ahead of us in life, and or it feels great to feel like we're doing better than others at times. And I genuinely try to avoid being in those two places. But anyway, that conversation, it made me think, like, am I giving off the impression that I think that I have some sort of like philosophy and that I'm living in a way that others aren't? I don't know. But anyhow, for me, when I put that into the hands of someone else, I have given away my power. And I've been watching a lot of really great lectures on power, and not like the first thing we do is we admit we're powerless. But most people that get that, truly get that, realize that that's how they get their power back, because it's not something to keep you like down and out or like shame and you have no power. It's like, no, for the first time you're cracking that self image to let some light in, to then say, I have to renegotiate my perception of myself and the world around me, so that I'm not living out of this defeated place. And if you're honest with yourself, you were powerless. So if you can be honest about that, you actually get your power back. So maybe there's all these little doors that have to crack open. And it's hard because someone's like, this is a blind spot in your life, or I have to go, clearly there's a blind spot here. But if I admit it, maybe I can get my power back. And maybe I have to just feel embarrassed or uncomfortable or whatever, guilty for like a moment in order to pass through this obstacle. I feel like I'm getting better at, again, the humility thing. It's like, oh my God, like it almost brings me to tears. It's like I can't be told that I'm missing it all the time for the rest of my life. It's like, when am I going to get it? It's like, I don't know if there's anything to get.
According to Mary Beth on Saturday, there's not.
But I
So,
think that's the illusion. And I think that's why we still feel that feeling, you know?
yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, for me, that's why I asked the question, because the involving others into my expectations of me, when I involve others, that's when it gets weird. Like
Hmm.
I have to
Yep.
be I have to be grounded in a right-sized version of self-importance that's based in a healthy self-esteem, and that's already a full-time job. And if I let other people garnish that with my then perception of their perception, I'm screwed.
Yeah. I agree.
Or it can be good. I mean, those things can also be good. Sometimes we get really positive feedback, and don't let that go to your head. It's so
Hmm.
it's tough. It's tough.
Absolutely. Are you
Yeah,
done your answer now?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, here we go. Question number 2 from Milan to Mr. B Dubs. Each time we release more of what ties us to false expectations and beliefs about who we are, we no longer, okay, each time, sorry, that I said that wrong. Each time we release more of what ties us to false expectations and belief about who we are, we're no longer contained by our addiction or our old narrow view of what life is supposed to look like. We
Yes,
learn
sir.
the power we gain in the 11th step is available to us when we are doing our higher power's will and living in self acceptance. How has self acceptance changed your expectations in your life? Oh, yeah.
I, I
Sizzling.
I genuinely feel like that question is literally like the whole thing.
Well, we could,
It
anyway,
is.
just then
So
explain how you feel that.
yeah. So I think I think that's the alienation. So what was said to me, like, everybody needs, not wants. Everybody needs to be accepted, respected, appreciated, and have a feeling that they belong. And in any scenario where that doesn't happen, there's a feeling of being cut off within oneself. It can happen in your family dynamic, it can happen in school, it can happen anywhere, and it can happen within oneself. So once we have a negative opinion of ourself, which is a lack of acceptance, or maybe a distorted, it's like they talk about dropping the rock, or like like that baggage. It's something that can start when you're like very, very little, and it becomes a story I told myself about who I was. And then slowly but subtly, this thing would interact with the decisions I was making, because my perception of self determined how I felt about myself and other people, which determined the decisions I made, which would then give me the feedback that would either remind me that the story is true, failure, guilt, shame, punishment, and or success. And I based the whole thing on failure, punishment, or success. And I fell short so often in the success department. And or if I was, it still went in one ear and out the other. And I was constantly finding myself creating situations where I was creating shame, guilt, and punishment. And so by the time I was like 16, I was like telling myself a story that I wasn't good, life was unfair, and I found it incredibly challenging to accept that, which means I was on a daily basis rejecting myself. And so my solution was to try to change the way I felt or seek myself outside of myself, whether that was in a relationship or with my friends or pursuing some goal that I thought would finally make me feel okay. And none of that works. All those things can be good if they're coming from a healthy place with a healthy self-esteem. But as long as that is the goal, because you're here and I'm not going to be okay until I'm here, it will always leave you with that same void, in my opinion. So the greatest gift I've received to sort of tie that thought up is that when I got sober, I got to stop self-sabotaging. I cured my physical kind of being from that chronic stress and poison, which then allowed my mind to be less maddening and like defective, because when you're unwell in body, you're unwell in mind. And then I started living in a way that actually was esteemable rather than crippling my self esteem. And it slowly, 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 I started actually feeling like there was hope, and that I was someone of some value that maybe could redeem, or at least live out the rest of my existence in a way that didn't make me feel so terribly about existence.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was end of March last year where this guy from Southern California came on the online NA meeting that I do there, and it was he tied how the amends work into self-acceptance.
Okay.
And man, this guy was one of the greatest mental philosophers I've ever heard. But he basically tied it like this. It's like until you do your amends, right? Imagine I
Yeah.
owe you an amends, okay?
Sure.
And your name's in my phone, right? And and I haven't made this amends with you. So every
Yeah.
time my phone looks
Yeah. Yeah.
BW,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, Milan's a lying shithead who steals something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh,
until I make that amends, right? Everything in the world is like a trigger of this negative self perception.
a reminder.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And, um, but
Oh,
really, a trigger more than a reminder. Like a reminder would be just to take me back to the moment, but a trigger, I think, triggers that thought. Like I think it gets like boom. It's like like I don't need to remember the instance. I just need to remember my feeling of what it is, right?
sure.
Like it's just like boom, dishonest liar,
Sure.
dishonest lying thief, and then it's like and then Rebecca calls me in, and it's like cheater, liar, whatever it was, user, and like, all these things. And so it's through the amends that we can regain our self-acceptance, because then when I've made my amends with you and the phone rings and it's you, it's like resolution, forgiveness,
Amazing.
love, like that, like those word replacements of the, like, the feelings are replacements, getting replaced by positive words.
Yes.
And so it is then through that resolution that you can gain your self-acceptance. And then
I
once
couldn't
you
agree
have
more.
self-acceptance, it's the only way for me to burst through and start having acceptance of others. And
Amazing.
without that level of acceptance for others, I'm going to have expectations on you that I think you should be different. It's the
Right.
only way that that's ever going to change.
To combat
So
that,
it's
yeah.
it's like, like for him, it was just like, he's like 4, 5, and 6 were great. He's like, but 7, like 7, 8, 9 were what allowed me to change my interactions with everybody in the world, and starting with
That's brilliant.
myself. And
That's brilliant.
you know, um,
Well, yeah,
I
basically,
think that there's still a lot of shit that isn't cleared out, because I still really struggle with self-acceptance on a
okay.
regular basis. You
Yeah,
know,
I can,
um,
yeah.
I and no matter how much I've cleared, there's still enough there that it's really causing discomfort in me. Like when I leave here and go home later this week, I'm immediately doing another step four. I've
Nice.
realized I've come to a big conclusion while I'm here, that about one of my defects, my defective anger. I've come to a big clarification about it. Is that, like, I was raised in a rough place. I fought all the time, and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
fighting was my solution, right? It
no
took
doubt.
away the pain. It took away the pain. And now anger doesn't serve that function. Anger doesn't take away my pain. It makes more
No,
problems, you know? And
no doubt. You're basically tossing a net in front of you to trip on for sure.
yeah, absolutely. So I hope that answered that question. You got another question
Didn't
for
see
me,
it
Mr. B
coming.
Dubs?
Yeah, I didn't see it coming, which is interesting. Just an absolutely beautiful fact of like that is so true, so relatable, and you could go on and on about the brilliance of the, like you talked about, the sequence, self-knowledge from 4 and 5, 6, 7, and then having the humility to approach the people to relieve your mind so that when you see that name you don't immediately come beacon back. And
Yeah.
then I won't get into it, but I won't tell this full story, but I basically like
No, no,
from
tell
something.
it quick. Tell it right now.
Okay, so in my process, one of my best friends from childhood had a bachelor party. It was like 60 of us. We went up into the country. We played golf. We went out on the town, did all this fun stuff. There was a bus rented, and it was like $100 a piece to have unlimited drinks on the bus and whatever the other things we did. I had cash on me that night. I did try to give it to his brother that evening. He's like, "We're gonna just take email transfers. Don't worry about that right now." He was like, "I don't want to think about that right now." And then time went on, and I sort of like um, just didn't. And an email was sent at some point in time with the list of people that had not yet contributed. And I ended up, I don't know, I was in school and then I started my sobriety journey and then I moved away and I like saw that email and it I immediately was like, oh my God. Like I was like, I can't believe I'm one of these guys on this list and that I didn't pitch on this night. And like, so anyway, of course it affected my self-esteem, my image, what I thought these people must have thought of me. Like this guy doesn't even pitch $100. Like, and anyway, we're talking like 6 years later, maybe 5. I think it was more like 5. I reach out to my buddy. I'm like, I need your brother's email. I have to, and I didn't even tell him why. He gave it to me. I said, look, we're never talking about this again. I said, I came across an old email. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't actually throw my $100 at that event. Here's the transfer. I was going through a lot at the time. It's been brought to my attention, and I'm really sorry. You know, I didn't make an amend like I would if I had actually harmed him, like through behavior. But anyway, he wrote back, "That's really sweet of you. I didn't even have a clue that that was the case. I would never have remembered. I hope you're well." And but the point is, immediately relieved, never thought about it again, you know? Never
Mm.
thought about it again, completely relieved. I wouldn't be embarrassed to bump into him. I would give him a hug instead of walking the other direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really, you know, they really make a difference. And, you know, and your level of self-acceptance about being a person who contributes and being a person who honestly, you know, does their part in something, right?
Yeah,
Like, you
really
know,
important.
yeah,
So
and you know,
that's like the smallest one I made, but it had the exact same impact. Complete relief, no
mm,
more feeling of negativity within oneself, and you know, just mind clear.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah, the
Okie
amends.
dokie.
Great point.
Do you have a question for me?
Okay. Yeah. So where does your strength come from in your recovery, knowing that you want a higher quality of life when you let yourself or other people let you down? In other words, if you feel like you've fallen
Mm.
short, you know, where do you find your strength?
You know, I think that by this point, I have faith in this process of this program.
Okay, that's amazing. Yeah,
You know, like too many things have changed for the positive in my life.
very well
For
said.
for for me to for me to be like, oh fuck this program. It's not working because I'm still angry. Like, you know, like I'm alive. You know, I'm straight. I've had like, you know, shame and guilt-free days in my life. I've had an influx of joy and serenity. You know, like there's so many dramatic things that have changed
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's like, um, you know, like with what I'm going through right now with this dis-ease I'm experiencing with some of my character defects. You know,
yes,
old me would have used that as a like, well, fuck this, this isn't working. You know, like I would have avalanched the little pile of negative stuff in my life
yeah,
against this mountain of positive proof. You
no
know,
doubt. Yeah,
and it would have started with a pity party for me, and then it would have rolled into like, you know, from pity party to like gone use it. Like that would
yeah,
have been my solution before. And you know, like
yeah,
just even with my daughter, you know, we were walking and having some conversation about things, and I'm just like, partying is not a solution to me anymore. Like it's
yeah.
not a solution. Like I don't see how it's going to solve any of my problems. So quite honestly, it's like I sat with it and I've been thinking about what's been going on a lot. And it's I realized first of all, I'm like, I'm seeing more of the onion now than I could have before for me to peel the
Totally.
layers and go back. And so it's like
Yeah.
I would rather sit in discomfort to grow than dis-ease and be stagnant.
No question. Well said. Yeah.
And so, you
Same.
know, like right now, during my exercise, I've started praying a lot, actually. I started praying and, you know, I'm feeling some kind of guidance from it. Like
Beautiful.
I'm feeling like that's part of my strength. And you know, doing like a fair bit of exercise right now. Like I'm, you know, I'm doing like a whatever, a 1.2K beach walk in the morning, but you know, it's all on
Nice.
sand. And I'm doing like 45 minutes of laps before that. And
Beautiful.
it's just you know, I swear, like for me, you know, I'm not trying to shit shame anyone who's not exercising in their program, but some of the biggest benefits inside the program have been from making my body healthier. Like
No doubt.
without my body being healthy, it wasn't allowing my mind to get healthier, to be
Exactly.
honest,
Yeah.
for myself. You know, and like this Saturday, I will officially be 11 months no cigarettes, which is one of the longest stretches in my whole life. And
Hopefully, yeah.
yeah. So
Hopefully
anyway,
that's it.
I think that's my answer to that question.
It's a great answer.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that I love how you said like I'd rather be uncomfortable in the process of healing and growing than fall back into disease and then like go down this other way, you
Stagnancy.
know.
Mm.
It's tough, man. It's discipline. So that's why you see all these people out there that are like getting the world jacked about like, my knee was hurting and then I realized I was being a little beep and I just got up and I ran like 10 kilometers, and like
Now you're talking David Goggins.
so yeah, I got to tell you, man, that approach to things back when I was younger, I was like so taken back by that kind of approach, thought it was the wrong thing because I needed someone to like I needed that sensitivity and all that. But like, I got to be honest with you, I think there's a time and a place for that sort of attitude. And I actually find it quite hilarious and kind of true with, within reason. So, so I had a spiritual experience 10 years before I got sober. I I've talked to many people that have had similar experiences. I was kind of at the crossroads of like not really caring if I lived or not, to be very honest with you. And I was met with the warmest, most I don't I will never be able to put into words the I had a feeling of acceptance within myself that made me know I'm not making this up. Like I knew that there was something more. Spirituality became real. I felt a hug from within. I whatever it sounds like. I was met with what I think created me in a loving embrace that gave me just enough strength to go the 9 to 10 years further to when I got clean or sober. And to this day, through the steps and like you said, there's all these undeniable things that have happened that give you faith in the program. I'm in the exact same pair of shoes, man. So it comes down to no matter how gnarly it gets, no matter how many things seem like they're piling on. Like I think I was in my second year and I got a career ending brain injury and I was really, really sick. Like I felt every day like I struggled to like deal with regular life, like stuff that used to be like no problem. And I was so proud of the work I did. I worked so hard to get into that and I my identity got crushed. And then, recently I've had stuff happen that is just it shattered me into dust, my friend. Like literally like I'm like, whoa, I don't even know what piece to pick up. Obliterated. And that could be dramatic to someone else. It's like, no, you still got this, you still got that. And I'm just being honest. That's how it feels. So whether it's true or just in my own mind, dust. And these moments have taken, like, we're talking like every resource suggested, whether that's a book, a friend, a sponsor, a mentor, a meeting, a prayer, exercise, a glass of water. Like, if I don't combat that feeling of obliteration with like every single thing that I've been taught and told, and all the things that you mentioned, like the undeniable experiences that lead you to have faith in this program, I won't make it. I don't know why. It's too big within. I can't explain it, but so I'm being held by these anchors in the storm, and it's like it's just profound how much faith you need to throw into things. If you don't stay in the day, so okay. Faith one day and friends and support and like you will make it through as long as you don't go, you know what? Today I'm changing my opinion and I'm going to just have a sip of this. I give up.
They they call it the case of the fuckets.
Right. And the last time I got into a lot of trouble, I literally said fuck it before I went out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember saying it, and I ended up in the back of a police car.
There you go.
But yeah, so that's where I get my strength, and it's dude, it is based in a true desire to want to like live well. Like the motive is good, you know?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I got a question for you, Mr. B Dubs.
I cannot wait.
When we start trading on promises and expectations in our prayers, we are setting ourselves up for spiritual crisis. A higher power is not a vending machine. Miracles happen to us and around us all the time. The very
Yeah.
fact that we are alive and clean to face this challenge is a miracle, and they're always unfolding if we look for them. How do you watch for expectations in prayer?
Huh. Yeah, that's a really nice question. Um it's funny because it's based in this conditioning that these types of things will make us okay, you know. I don't think so. I actually used to believe that I'd be okay if some of these things were to unfold and occur in my life. I had this weird thought, like when I was younger. It's like I've done it a few times, and I hear other people say these things, and I'm like, yeah, you are crazy, but I guess I was too. Um, you know, one day someone's gonna tap me on the shoulder and say, you know, I really see a lot of potential in you, and I'm gonna give you a job that you never thought you'd ever have, and I'm going to put a ton of you know, responsibility in your lap and make a name for yourself. Like this type of fancied idea that, I mean, it's a harsh reality when you get down to the nitty gritty and realize it's not going to happen unless you make it happen, you know. Although there really are a lot of beautiful things that do happen kind of spontaneously in this life as well. So I don't want to diminish the opportunity for these things to happen, but I think our higher power, like I mentioned way back, is a good parent. They are not just going to give you what you ask for, but they want to see you, and it's like this, you, what good would it be if I walk for you? You need to learn how to walk because I know you can walk because I gave you the faculties to walk, you know?
Mhm.
And
Yep,
so that's sort of how I differentiate between vending machine God and faith in like whatever lives within all of us that wants me to succeed, whatever that looks like. So I think the old me probably did pray for some external things, if I'm honest. Um, you know, there's country songs written about that now. I think more and more people are becoming aware of that. Like, if you think about the higher powers of relationship, we don't want to thrust too many human qualities on this much higher power. But if you had a friend and they treated you the way that we treat, sounds like the most of us treat God, you probably wouldn't be overly impressed with that friendship. You know what I mean? That's what came
absolutely.
through. That's what came through to me a long time ago. I was like, if this was a friendship, like I am not doing a great job here, you know? So I look at it like I actually want a relationship with that. And I think it's fundamentally begins with my relationship with myself, which gives me access to the outside, bigger kind of dynamic of how that whole thing works. Because it's so funny. These were like mind blowing thoughts when I was in early sobriety. It was like, because there's this idea of, it's not an idea. It seems like it's a fact, this free will thing. And you can pray all you want, but if you go to the liquor store, it's over, you know? And I used to pray a lot. I used to pray and pray and pray, but then I would always walk to the liquor store, you know? Please help me. Please help me. And like I wasn't gonna stop going to the liquor store until the help came. And then it was like, no, stop going to the liquor store and then we'll see what happens. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's my
exactly.
experience with that kind of idea of your question.
You know, you read in the book, right? The AA book, it says praying only for God's will and the power to carry that out.
Yeah.
It doesn't say for Jenny's cousin in the hospital. It doesn't say for Stevie to get that new job. It doesn't I hear it all the time when I'm in meetings. Oh, I'll pray for you for that. And I'm not sure what I believe on that. Like
Okay.
for myself, I really don't think that you can ask for specific things. I don't think that that's how it works. That if we're to believe what the program says, right? Which
Mhm.
if I don't believe in it, then what am I doing sitting here with you right now, right? Um,
Yeah.
like what we have to change is our perception of reality, not
Yeah,
reality
that makes a
at
lot of
any
sense.
point. And so then if that's the case, then what we need to pray for, like what I need to pray for is that spiritual principle of acceptance, that spiritual
No doubt.
principle of honesty to get me through something, that spiritual principle of tolerance for me to accept these other people around me that might be, like their actions might still, be changing
Yeah.
my day because I am not living with tolerance,
Hmm.
people are gonna die. People are gonna die. And praying that somebody is gonna make it through their sickness. Like we just don't have those kind of strings. You can't have a God that pulls strings sometimes when we want and other times when we don't want. Like that's not how it's gonna work. Like
Well,
I remember wanting to go see God when I was high on acid. And
nice.
I remember getting so fucking high that I thought I did, like, and this is what I remember about it. That God was like, you're breathing on your own. And it was like all
Yeah.
of a sudden I was like so high, I was like, holy shit, I was forgetting to breathe. Like my job was to breathe. His
Yeah.
job was like the universe. And
No doubt.
like there's certain elements of life that we're on our own for. Like
Well,
and and that's like we have our duties. We have no clue what his duties or her duties are. You know what I mean? Like maybe they're the like the higher powers duties were just to make this universe, and that's job enough. you know it doesn't have to work with the mechanics of it. It doesn't care if it's a black hole or a star, and it doesn't care if we live or die. Like it just like our job is literally just to live in alignments with our thoughts and our actions
no doubt.
and not hurt other things. And
Well,
for
and I think
me,
that, yeah, yeah,
it's just like we're literally going back to that, trying to be the one who pulls the strings and control the universe with like with our thoughts. Like it's literally going back to our sickness when we're praying to control the universe. And I can't co-sign on that. And so do you have another question for me, BW?
I do. And I appreciate what you had to say about that last one as well. Um, yeah, that'd be a neat conversation actually to talk about that in more depth.
Well, if
The
you
lack
want to
of,
comment on what I said, go ahead. I'm fine with that.
well, what the thing that comes to mind the most, and I think it's been one of the hardest things to do, the two things that put me in the right state or place, my sponsor looked me in the eye and he said, "You're the problem." I share this with a lot of people. And he said, "And nobody's thinking about you." And I was just like, ah, like, you know what I mean? It was, it was just like, it was great because he's sort of saying, like, it's all good, but like, it's not about you.
Yeah.
But he was also saying, the sooner you take responsibility for like oh man, I got so much clarity early on, and like it just seems hard now sometimes. Like it was so clear to me, like if I ran into an issue with someone, I was like, they're obviously living in fear, they're obviously coming from a place of fear. I'm trying my best, I'm not taking it personally. Like I was a little more like, because it was fresh, well, you'd think that with time it would be like way more uh ingrained, but it actually can become tougher because of that idea. Like you said, it's like I shouldn't be angry. um, so which is perfect because my next question is, do you think you put a lot of pressure on perfection versus progress? And then I added, like, we have so much to learn, but we seem to still hold ourselves at this high standard, you know?
Sure, it's like I don't sit there with a chalkboard and be like, good Milan, good Milan, good Milan, good Milan, bad Milan. And what happens is that when I'm being good Milan, it's almost like I'm blind and oblivious to it.
Sure.
But when I'm bad Milan, there's this big check mark that's the whole fucking board for a minute, you know? And so, like I was really smart as a kid. And it
Well,
was
yeah.
like, oh yeah, like when I didn't get perfect on a test, I was
Yeah.
really hard. And like my stepfather had a joke. Like I would come in and be like, "Oh yeah, like I got 98 on this test," and he'd be like, Why didn't you get 100?" But it was like, I was always like, "Why didn't I get that 100?" Like that, just like that little comment, like echoed in my head all the time. Like
No
I
way.
just wasn't perfect enough. I was
No.
valedictorian of my high school, and I was like, man, I could have got a higher average. I could have got a higher
Were you?
average. Yeah, like, scholarship for 2 years to university. Could have got a full scholarship. Could have been better, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and so, oh man. And it's like that, man. I can be nice. I can react well. I can be making like doing tons of stuff all day that's great with my family.
Yeah.
Get mad once and I'm like, just not tolerant, just not tolerant. And that'll echo in my head, man. And then still, that's one of the most important parts of doing a regular moral inventory, like you do in your step 10,
Yeah. Yeah.
is to see where you're winning.
Good
Because
point.
it's just like, man, for someone like me, I can think about how I'm losing all day long.
Yeah.
I need that moral inventory to see my wins as well as my losses. So for
Well said.
me, it really boils down to, keeping myself in check by actually listening to the steps.
No doubt.
Like they put number 10 in for a reason and they didn't do
No
it.
doubt.
Like they weren't like, I don't think it's that important, but let's just put this in. It wasn't like that. It was like, well, shit, man, how do we keep ourselves in line? How do we let ourselves know we're doing good? Or how do we let ourselves, keep that shit clear so we don't fester on being bad again? Like
Yeah.
there is a point for every single one of those steps.
Oh, yes. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you now, Mr. B Dubs?
So for myself, um, oh, so yeah, I think for me, I don't really know what my overall goal is at this point as far as like being I think you're very good at reminding of like the purpose of living out of the principles. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned before, praying for certain things to happen. It's like, no, we're supposed to live in alignment. Like, so I was gonna ask you too, and then I'll like continue answering the question. It's like, why are you so affected by that giant check mark of what I did wrong when you're blind to the like 17 things that you did well that day? Like, what is that? Is that God's design? Like, is that what keeps us pursuing being better people? Like,
It's
or
part
is
of my
that like,
sickness, dude. It's like all of my low self-esteem from that I never dealt with as a kid is still
yeah,
sitting there, just like my addiction, doing
yeah,
push-ups. It's just waiting for me to see a
yeah,
failure instead of for me to embrace the wins.
no doubt.
And that's a mindset that I have to change that is still
It
there
is.
and present. Like it's very funny because, like how it says about our instinctual drives are, like kind of going overtime, right? It the same thing that keeps me trapped in negative self-thought is also what makes me really successful in certain areas of my life.
Right
And
on.
so
Yeah.
it's like seeing when that drive crosses the line from like being a great guitar player to thinking I'm a shitty guitar player.
No
Like
doubt.
like or being a good dad. Like, I'm trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good dad, and then it's like I just see myself as a shitty dad. Like it's like, what I was saying the other week, where enthusiasm crosses over to anxiety. It's like learning
Sure.
that spectrum and finding the identification point of when a positive thing becomes negative. And that's part of my growth in this process, is that self-evaluation.
Very cool. Yeah. So one of the things that has become one of my greatest reflections of progress, it was my ability in the last chunk of time to make decisions and show up where I was responsible to be places, not perfectly, but the ability to still, I don't know, yeah, like follow through with my commitments when all I wanted to do was hide. You know, like that's a huge, and I don't mean like hide from the world, like I'm in so much pain that I don't know if I can go do this right now. And I never missed it. I always went, you know what I mean? Because I knew that that was good for me, even though my like nervous system was firing, like, you know, and every single time I was in the presence of, I'm more referring to my job. Like when I went to my job, it was like a blanket and a reassuring kind of sign that I was where I was supposed to be. And it helped me stay in the day, get through the day, relate to others, and also still facilitate the things that I needed, like, like to have a job. And it's just one example. Or, to say yes when someone invites you somewhere when you just want to stay home. Like, I think in the past, I in my early 20s, when I was in the worst phase of my mental health and addiction, I missed out on life because I was either out actively participating with alcohol, or I was hiding from the world because I was sick. And like I said no to so many social things. I was invited so many places and I said no all the time because I had such bad anxiety that I genuinely didn't think I could be in those environments. And so even when things are not going what would seem to me as not well, that's my progress versus perfection, because the fact is there's nothing even close to perfection going on, but the progress is very clear because I know how I used to respond to that pressure and it was way less healthy. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely.
Like nothing very spectacular, just that to me is, and I like to keep things simple like that. I honestly do.
Yeah.
I like to have like, I like even when my progress is humble. It's like, oh well, you went to work. It's like it's not about that. It's about that it's better than it used to be,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. It's relative change.
Mhm. It also really highlights how effed up I was before.
Yeah, for right here, right with you on that one.
And I didn't even mean to be.
I don't think we were aware of it. Like
Yeah,
I really feel that most of my defects were hidden inside delusions, man.
no
100%.
doubt.
Like, I just, it's almost embarrassing to me how deluded I was, really, for
I feel
myself.
similar.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm not sitting in that shame too much. I'm here to expose
No,
it because just like Mary Beth showing her struggle inside that
that
honest
vulnerability.
sharing thing, right? Like that really helped a lot of us at that meeting,
I
and
believe it,
so
man.
me saying that my perception of my actions not being clear and honest to myself, to other people, that might help somebody else out there, you know?
It will.
Okie dokie, I got another question for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, you got to close your eyes. No, I'm kidding. No. We are on the wrong track when we hold ourselves to unreasonable standards and berate ourselves for failing to meet our own unrealistic expectations. Allowing ourselves to be human does not mean that we live without boundaries or restrictions. It means that we seek sanity in our lives by taking the actions we can and turning the results over to our higher power. We let go. What are your techniques to let go in your life, BW?
That's really nice. Yeah, your questions contain within them lessons in the form of a question. Anyhow, well, that's probably the whole point. so so as usual, some things are very easy and some things are incredibly challenging. So like if I have an instance, for example, that conversation I had with my sibling, I brought it up today. I probably won't think about it past tomorrow. Whereas that could have been something that bothered me for like a month in the past. Maybe I'd think about it years down the road and be like, remember when you told me you thought that I thought I was more enlightened than other people? Like, man, that really threw me off. Um, well, I brought it up twice now, so maybe I'm wrong.
You need to do a step 4 on this one.
I
Like take it
definitely
right
need
through
to.
the
I
chart.
need to.
Take
I need to seek help on this. Um,
I would take it right through the chart, man.
yeah. Um, so I mentioned this in the first one. I'm getting better at realizing where my part is and like taking, so it's really scary. So it's like, okay, I always go back to what's your motive and what are you trying to accomplish? Have you done the things that would give this thing an actual chance to be? Or are you expecting something to happen without doing the things that necessarily are necessary? Um, so for me, that's a combination of letting go. It's all about healthy and unhealthy. So for me, pressure can be healthy and it can be unhealthy. And so letting go usually happens quite smoothly when I know I've done my part. When they say leave the result up to the higher power or, you know, like take action and then surrender the result, it's pretty neat. And sometimes the results are pretty amazing. I had a guy that I sat beside who passed away in the last, I think, 2 years. He was in his 80s and he told me so many cool stories. He would always shoot the breeze with me before a meeting because we sat beside each other. And he was so funny. I would always say to him, like, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And like, maybe if I do this, and he would always look at me and say, you're going to do it. He was sort of reminding me that, like, there's a limit to how much I can change the result of things, you know? And it was so cool because he was in like, I guess, a phase of his life where he just like, I think he had truly surrendered, you know, like, and so they say you want what other people have or like promotion, you know, or sorry, oh, what do they say? Rather than promotion,
Attraction,
attraction,
not
rather,
promotion.
yeah, attraction. And so that's what that kind of gentleman was to me. And he gave me this advice. And of course, I overdid it because I usually do. But he said, go get a box. And he called it a God box. And he said, all the things that are troubling you right now, or the names of people that you're having any issues with and or have in the past that haven't been resolved within yourself, just write it down and put it in the box. And he basically was saying, like, take note and then put it in the box and it's gone, and let the higher power take care of the rest. And I'm not making this up. Almost every single thing that went in that box has been resolved in a healthy and or natural way and no longer has the weight it used to have. And it was just a cool symbol thing.
I
Like
need one of those boxes, man. I want to
it,
try that.
his name was Harry. He was the man. I
I'll
think he
call it
was,
the Harry God box.
yeah. Yes. So he said, and he even specifically told me, he was like, get a very plain box, like just a very regular box, And of course, I went to like Value Village and got this like Japanese sliding door like thing. But anyway, it had this nice little drawer that had like this velvet inside. But anyway, I had all these little names like in these little pieces of paper folded up in this box, and then I'd shut the Japanese doors. And but I'm telling you, these things were resolved in time, and most of it was had nothing to do with me,
That
because
sounds
the
amazing.
reason that, sorry.
Oh, it sounds amazing. I can't wait to try that technique.
It's kind of cool because the reason that those things were bothering me is because I was powerless over them. So where does the power come from? Not me. The reason the issues are there in the first place is because there's a lack of power over a result that I perceived would make me feel better about myself in my existence, whether it's in a dynamic with my employer, with my friend, with my mom. And like, there's so much going on in these dynamics that in order to think like, oh, they should have had a higher level of respect for me. It's like, what? Like, we're talking about human beings, you know? And so I
Absolutely.
just, I love that. You know, it's like lack of power, but it doesn't have to be scary. It's just right sizing your self importance and giving things the opportunity to unfold the way. Like, we also have to pay the same homage and send the same respect to every other individual that might take it upon themselves at some point in their life to say, maybe I should go to these people and let them know I'm sorry for the way that I interacted with them. Like, we have to believe, even though it doesn't happen very often, that other people want that same freedom. Because you mentioned at the very beginning, or it was in the second question, it was that gentleman from the U.S. that you thought was so brilliant because he talked about the importance of the
Mhm.
amend and the alleviation of that sense of fear and then the mental bondage of self based on the fact that we had effed these things up in the past and how that could constantly remind us of or trigger us about how we feel about ourselves in amongst the world. So it's like, what better gift could you receive than being free of that? And so for me, it's been a combination of like step work, trudging the road, and then simple things like putting a name on a piece of paper and putting it in a box and just saying thank you. You
I
know.
love that. I can't wait to try that. As soon as I get home, I'm making a Harry God box.
So here's the thing. It seems like, yeah, it almost seems like a hack. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna put all my troubles in a box. But it's a symbol, and it's what the point is. There's an actual scientific part of it because you're giving it over. You know, you're handing it over
Mm. Hmm.
because you can't fix it.
Yeah. Well, in the same vein that, the power that the our step work has by writing it down, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
even writing that on that piece of paper, right? That's a physical act. And
You're
I don't care.
acknowledging it.
I don't care what anybody says, like certain things in life, like my affirmations, my step work, and now my Harry God box, it's gonna be written down. There's a power to that.
You're the man. I'm telling you, man. It was
Mhm.
amazing, and I got positive results. They weren't like perfect or like always in my favor, but they were results.
The judging it is actually an expectation.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
So, my techniques to let go are pretty much, based through the step work. Like first of all, my surrender, trying to live by the spiritual principles and, and generally when I'm faced with a conflict, like in that sense of letting go, right? I'm letting go of my intolerance of somebody else, my lack of acceptance of somebody else, my anxiety of what that future outcome should be. And and how have I been doing that? It's been doing the step work, but I'm trying to pull more prayer and meditation into my practice in itself. And honestly, I'm habit stacking on the fact that I've already implemented exercise into my program, and putting that prayer and meditation on top of my exercise.
Beautiful.
And I'm finding that to be a really easy way to actually find more endurance for the exercise because I'm
No doubt.
distracting my mind from that, but
Yeah.
also to bring more regularity to that prayer and meditation. So, for me, that right now, that is the techniques. And, trying my best not to
Mhm.
catastrophize shit. You
Uh-huh.
know, like catastrophizing shit that hasn't happened or co-signing someone else's catastrophizations. Like I'm just like, nope,
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to catastrophize that until like we've got enough real present catastrophes that I don't need to make ones up anymore. Like
No doubt.
that just keeps me in a state of agitation and anxiety. So, do you got another question for me, B Dubs?
So I have it like in my mind. I sort of half jotted it. It's sort of like, so my question would be, you know how we kind of call things good or bad?
Mm,
In sobriety, I changed it to healthy and unhealthy. And it helped me a lot with those instincts. Like, is it healthy or is it unhealthy? Instead of like it's good or bad, like because we know, and you just chatted about it. You talked about like how the physical helps with the mental, and how you could do more because you're getting something out of it. And so the question would be, when it comes to the expectation, this helped me a lot, and I'm still blown away at how often I forget it. But granting, I've said it before in another one too, granting others the freedom to be unhealthy, knowing that there's divinity within that, even if it harms you, to get to a point where maybe that is the ingredients necessary for someone else that we love or care for that may be affecting us negatively, to get to that point that we got to, where the accumulation of what we used to call bad actually became part of the divinity that got us freedom. Like, if it wasn't for those bad things or
mm.
those unhealthy things, if you're honest with yourself, you would have always been that person, that ego driven, unhealthy, self centered, arrogant person. And it required the bad or the unhealthy to get well. So how do you allow everyone else to have an accumulation of unhealthy, given the same opportunity to maybe find their own freedom from their own bondage of self?
I'm practicing acceptance, trying
Yeah.
to learn acceptance every single day. That's the
Yeah.
only route for me. Like I can
Yeah.
wrap it up in any other package,
Yeah.
but that's the actual quest for me. You know, first thing is um, you know, if it's a substance related thing, to be
Yeah.
honest, I'm not gonna sit there and witness it. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
I don't have to watch you kill yourself with substances. And to be honest, to me, I even say to my friends who are still partying, like partying's not a spectator sport. I'm
Yeah.
happy to hang out with you and do something healthy because that's what I'm doing with my life. Like
Yeah.
anytime you want to go for a hike, you want to go swim and you want to do whatever, fine. But I'm not going to just come over and sit and watch you drink beers or do drugs or whatever. That's just not going to happen. So so that's how I navigate that part of it. But I really feel that, the most often confronted is character defects. Like living with family members who don't run a program that this situation that you're talking about comes up 1,000 times a day, you know?
Mhm.
And some days I'm able to just be like live and let live. But
No doubt.
I walk on dangerous ground when I'm tired, eating the wrong kind of foods, just feeling cornered by their defects, like
Yeah.
and then it's like, man, that little angry baby Milan comes out. And I'd like to say that I had a lot more control and power over that. But ultimately ultimately it's live and let live. But if it's just too toxic and too much, I remove myself from the situation.
Yeah.
Like I'm happy for you to continue being whoever you are, but I don't have to let toxicity like envelop my life just out of
No, you got that
tolerance.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's my answer to that.
Well, and it's a great answer because the truth is one of the main ingredients that shone a light on sort of like the shortcomings of mine was there was a handful of people that loved me that thought they knew me that were like, we're not really like digging this dude that you've become, you know? And that scared
Mhm.
me. That really scared me. It was a huge part of the ingredients that gave me the courage or the moment or motivation to want to get help, you know? So sometimes
Absolutely.
if we have to remove or limit our exposure to other people's unhealthy kind of like ways of living, that maybe that could also contribute to their motivation as well, you know?
I knew, like, almost peripherally consciously, when other people were crossing me off their okay list from my addiction.
I believe
You
that.
know, like, like I knew, there was definitely a pile of wives who did not want their husbands getting corrupted with me.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of husbands who didn't want their wives getting corrupted with me. Like I
No doubt.
know when that line was getting crossed. And so, these other people with these behaviors, they'll eventually come to some kind of realization if they're at all trying to um, change their life, and if
Yeah.
they're not trying to evolve, like I kind of had a friend in the program just yesterday. She was saying, like if people aren't trying to work on themselves, she's like, I'm just not really interested in shallow conversations and fake
No doubt.
interactions. So, like I realized when she said that, I'm like, I'm not either. I'm really not. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I'm saying you're a bad person. I'm just
No,
saying
no,
that
no.
I don't think we're going to have very much to talk about. And that's
Yeah.
okay because
Yeah.
I don't have to have something to talk about with everybody. And I don't have to share my life with everybody. In fact, it would be people pleasing and dishonest to say that I wanted to. So,
Yeah.
like right off the bat is that,
Oh,
let's grow together or let's grow apart. And that's fine with me. And I'm okay with that. And that's 100% where I'm at with that.
no doubt. And that's I think that's a realistic way of going about things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you?
So very similar. I think I'm getting better at having the courage to risk. So before I used to be really scared of losing connection.
Hmm.
I was really scared of losing connection. And there was a handful of people in my life that were really good at threatening loss of connection if you didn't do what they wanted you to do.
Yep.
And now I'm not as scared to live alone or be alone or lose connection because I'm whole within self better than I was before. There's still a few holes in the hole, but um I guess I'm more grounded in a stable sense of self, as well as like that spirituality has helped me quite a lot. And it's also brought a lot of new healthy people into my life. So
Hmm.
for the people that were a little more like, willing to kind of send you down the road if you didn't kind of participate in their noise, I'm not as scared to speak my mind in those dynamics and risk the loss of connection because there's two things that happen there. One, I'm being honest, and two, I'm also facing my fear. You know what I mean? So I get to benefit
Yeah.
from both of those things, and I think that's really healthy. So yeah, that to me is the biggest change. That fear of loss of connection was actually so strong before that I compromised often. You know,
Okay, that was great. That was perfect. Okay, I'm going to ask you another question, BW. And this, I think, has got to be the last round of questions for me just because of the time today.
no
I'm
sweat. I'm
really
done too.
loving that. I'm really loving this episode. Okay, so this is a good one because I really feel that it's something that I reflected on since being in options. Although we might wish that people would act according to our expectations, we don't want to miss the little miracles of seeing those who we never thought had it in them stepping up to the plate and really helping out. Have you seen this true in your life? If so, how? If not, how not?
Beautiful. Um, so yeah, and that's like really connected to that last thing we spoke about, because I think it's an amazing thing to give people, or not to give, it's not for us to give, but to be open minded to being surprised at what people are capable of. And I find that I've had some beautiful experiences with that. A lot of stuff in my family. One of the coolest things, I have a really, really good friend, and his mom, I think she was like a behavioral therapist, and she did a lot of work with families. And I told her when I was in my like fourth or fifth month that I was on this journey of like trying to change with the alcohol. And she said something really interesting, because she was like, now that you're changing, your family will have to change. She said, when one member of a family changes, everything has to reform to that person. It doesn't make you more important or special, or that everybody's changing to be like you. It just means that it's creating change. And so
I love that.
it's really cool. And I'll never forget her saying that, because my whole life, have only wanted us to be healthier as a family and as individuals. So my motives were always good, but I have been pleasantly surprised at sort of like how people have stepped up to the plate and or surprised me, and the other way too. But you just get better at handling that when it comes. And then you also remember, like, one day at a time, and hopefully these things maybe in time will change. But um yeah, I think in general it's just being open-minded to, and like, okay, so my last amend that I tried to make before I left Toronto to move to British Columbia 9 years ago, I threw it out, I casted it out. Man, it took 9 years, and I got a reply. And like, I try to clean up my mess as soon as possible, as they say, like, when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. But like, this was one of those big ticket items and things that I needed to try to connect with this human being, to let them know that I was aware of what I had done, that I was making positive life changes, and that I was really sorry, and that I was pretty much saying, you can be assured that I won't do this again. And so sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I think that was another really good example of like acceptance of the fact that there was an action taken, and I didn't get the result I wanted at the time, but I moved on, and it came in, it trickled in 9 years later, and it was really beautiful. And the person basically said I wasn't ready at the time. But it was like a really powerful, very good moment that was what you hope from a result of an amend. So that's another kind of cool story where you give it up, you try your best, and then you surrender the result. But some people surprise you, and I'm very open minded to being surprised, and like, not always thinking you have to like prove anything or convince anyone. Like, throw it out there, and sometimes we can be really blessed with positive results. Yeah.
Like a big part of what I realized my dis-ease with my relationships was when I did my first round of step work was
Uh-huh.
that a lot of my niceness and my generosity and everything, it came with the reciprocal expectation of action.
No
So it
doubt.
was like, kind of like when I would call in that favor, I really expected you to respond because I had been available for that favor for you. And it
No
really
doubt.
wasn't an act of service. So, like there in itself, it was like I felt entitled to create the expectation of morally who you were.
No doubt.
Because because it's like if I had that expectation of reciprocation, it's like now my actions get to define the entire group and how we should think and act. And that was a
No doubt.
really unhealthy thing because I created a lot of expectations. I resented a lot of friends and family for not acting in the same
Yeah.
reciprocation as me. But it
Yeah.
also though was really damaging to like other people's self-acceptance.
No
Like,
doubt. Yeah.
because when it wouldn't happen, I felt entitled to voice my dissatisfaction, and I'm basically insulting who you are as a person.
Yeah.
and like I look at that now and like how unhealthy that is in a family dynamic and a friendship dynamic. And why then would you even fucking try when you're getting insulted on things you didn't even know you were supposed to do? You know,
No doubt.
and so
It's tricky.
it really stopped those miracles of people stepping up. But it didn't even give them like an environment where I, like, even myself, if somebody had been doing what I was doing to them, I wouldn't have even stepped up. I would have been like, fuck this, I don't even care enough, like I'm out. And so, it really it really has so many rippling effects
I
that
agree.
that uh that are just so defeating in so many things that we're trying to do in life.
Yeah.
Like, and one of them is like, think of how much fucking mental energy it takes to decide what everybody else should be thinking and doing all the time. Like,
Yeah.
like it's just an
It's actually
incredibly
wild.
it's actually just like more than we could do. And so yeah, I think that's it for me today.
Yeah.
I really love our time together, and I look forward to
Great.
whatever we're doing next week. And do you have anything you want to say here at the end? Because I think you do.
What? No. I don't know, man. Like, I'll be very honest with you. I used to get in a lot of trouble for talking too much. Not like gossiping, but like I got in trouble for school for talking. And
Mm.
I've always loved talking. And I love talking to people, and I've loved speaking with you. I feel motivated to continue talking, and I think it's beautiful. I think I said it at the end of the last one. It's an opportunity to like unfold and lay out this stuff that we've actually had to like think and feel and live. I mean, some of the stuff we're casually talking about probably came in powerful lessons. Could have been really hard, really scary, really sad. So like there's some life that happened in order to have these like this stuff that we now speak about. And if it could be, something that we can all grow from, then I don't know. I can't get enough of it, really, if I'm honest. But the only other thing I would
Yeah.
say is that the Harry God box is worthy of a try.
Oh, I'm trying it. As soon as I get home, I'm gonna
Yeah,
like an HGB,
yeah. You got to
HGB.
you got to be patient though. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But
I'm gonna put
that
faux fur
that
on the
relief.
whole outside. I'm gonna put faux fur on the whole outside of my box. So it's a hairy
See,
God box.
see, yeah, yeah. See, he's decorating the box. Um, but yeah, that's it, man.
Okay.
Expectations is fundamental to discomfort, I think, in our previous life, and let's hope that we can get better at it. But I also think it's completely reasonable to hope for these positive and healthy interactions with one another.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it is too. I love you,
Yeah.
brother. Guess what?
Love you,
Tune
bro.
in next week for more recovery fun. Bye bye, everybody. Please help us help others. If you like what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. So please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you.